trying to do something there. Anyway, that's what anyway, that one.
Don't listen to people.
So anyway, all the rest of them had, and there was another one that did the same thing. So I said, well, I'm not gonna let him do like that. Peeled the egg off of most of them. He had it stuck.
All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Sunday morning. I don't know if I'll be able to make it to full time today because of allergies and drainage, but we will go as far as we can go, or we will go until the correct time elapses. So one of the two. And last week I wasn't here because I was overcome by being sick and having sinuses. So we are picking up 139, and that is starting at purpose. So now remember, we're talking about Matthew, and this is just an overview of the book, and then we'll go to the next book. But here, as we end this overview, now coming to the purpose. And so it talks about, unlike John's gospel, Matthew likes a precise statement of purpose. So remember, in the gospels, they are letters, and letters are inspired, and they're also to the believers at that time, and they're just as relevant to believers today. So with a letter, you don't really need a precise statement of purpose. It's not a thesis. He's not writing a paper for a project. He's not, so really, although that is an observation, it does lack one. It doesn't lack and the purpose for this letter is type statement. But with that, it doesn't really distract from the letter either. But there are indications throughout the letter of what the purpose, besides the purpose being a message from God to us, what are some of the areas that the letter or the book talks about? And one of them is reaching Jewish people. And it talks about the second one is a reader's understanding of the person and work of Jesus in order to make an intelligent decision about him. And so when we talk about, think about this, the people who saw Jesus and they saw him and they heard him speak, they saw miracles, they saw that he lived exactly what he said, his words were confirmed through miracles. You have all of these things that are occurring, and yet you still had people make a no decision. And that was after they saw it, they heard it firsthand, they may have witnessed miracles. There was a lot of people that knew what Jesus was doing, because when he would go somewhere, there would be a large crowd, right? Those people, there were no billboards saying that, hey, Jesus is coming on the 23rd of March, and we're going to have a big, meeting out on the grass, and bring your towels and blankets, and don't worry about lunch. Lunch will be provided. Right there wasn't any of that. And so when he came and he spoke, people knew he was coming, and they knew Jesus can save us physically. And that's where we have the men who brought their paralyzed friend, and they knew if we just get near Jesus, he can fix this. And I don't care that we're going to cut through this guy's roof, right? We're going to do it because we got to get there. So when we read the Bible today, although we don't see it firsthand, and we don't see the miracles as they occur, and we don't get to hear Jesus, we still read it. It is recorded for us. So the same decision is required today that was required over 2,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. It is knowing what Jesus said, knowing who Jesus is, knowing that you must make a choice. Every single person who hears the gospel makes a choice. Some people choose no. Other people choose yes. So that decision has been going on since Jesus himself was talking to the crowds. So the Matthew also, it's presented in a way that helps the readers understand the person and work of Jesus in order to make an intelligent decision about it. So that's also what we see in Matthew. And Matthew shows a profound interest in preserving the teachings of Jesus. Now, although Matthew does have the teachings of Jesus, I hate to attribute solely to Matthew that desire to record it, because like we said, it's one book from Genesis, Revelation, inspired by God and written by the writer. So, but it does have these groups that are in Matthew. And so now here's where we're going to, and as we go through these viewpoints, you're going to see a couple words over and over, very similar words, and they're going to go around the word suggest or some vocabulary very much to that, because the Bible doesn't tell us everything, but the Bible tells us what we need to know. So with that, are there questions, and we've talked about that, are there questions about topics in the Bible that we can go, well, if this and this and this, it must equal this? Well, yes, you can go that way, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's perfect, right? Maybe it's not yes equals this. So, and like we talked, the Bible doesn't tell us everything about Jesus. We don't know how he spent the summer of his 14th year. What did he do all summer? Right? I'm not sure what I did all summer on the 14th year of me. Much so, as we look at this, though, please keep in mind that when we see these upcoming viewpoints, they're exactly that. And so that the viewpoints are trying to go what we read, and then they're trying to make an analysis of it. And so there's a difference between the inspired word we're reading and the analysis that they're making. So the Gospel of Matthew, and I suggest that he wrote primarily to ethnic Jews to present the gospel, to lead them to make an intelligent commitment to Christ, right? Because we see it's from a Jewish informational background, and it does follow that path. After commitment, Matthew wanted them to understand Jesus' teaching so that they may grow, obey, and fulfill the Great Commission. Now, that statement right there, that applies to everybody who ever accepts Christ, right? That's why that would be, although the beginning part may be framed from we have genealogy, we have some of the other things that would have been very important for Jews, and it's very important for us today, because we all should be reading the Old Testament too, to see the expectation and the prophecies for the Messiah coming. But once we start getting into, now you've made a decision to follow Christ, then at that point, you may be a Jew by heritage and lineage. You're an Israelite, right? But you're no longer a Jew in the sense of there's Jews and Gentiles, there's Jews and Christians and Gentiles. You have made a commitment to Christ, and you are a Christian following Christ. So no matter what background you came from, at the point you make that decision, then the rest of Matthew is great, because it's understanding Jesus' teaching so that we might grow, right? Obey him, right? And fulfill the Great Commission. So right on with the message being eternal for all Christians, wherever and whenever you may be. So when we look at this genealogy, the outline of Matthew, then these are always good. You can like put a little tab at the top because as you look at Matthew, Mark, and you're doing all the rest of the Bible, right? It's a great idea to have an outline that lets you just look at it and go, oh, that's where that story would be at, right? That's where I would have found it. So in following that, we have the genealogy and birth. We have the worship, flight, and return of the Messiah. We have, now just in those first 2 chapters, that's a lot that's gone on. And that's some time that's occurred too, right? So we have the genealogy, the birth, the worship, the flight, and the return of the Messiah. That is a pretty condensed storyline. And it goes back to, it's what we need, right? What did they do in Egypt? What did his dad do? Where did they stay? Did they have a really cool place because they had these gifts? Or did they just stay like normal people? Did they live like on the Nile, or did they live like in some other outlying area? Did they not live did they live in Memphis? Did they live in Giza? Did they live in, right? But that's why these first 2 chapters, they go really quick. And so, like I said, there's all sorts of things that would be interesting to know, but the Bible tells us what we need to know. And then we go on, the words and works of the Messiah. Wow. Now we're talking about, in chapter 3, preparation for the ministry, and starting off with John the Baptist. So not only did we have the return, but we basically missed the childhood, right? This is a fast-moving book. This book takes us, the genealogy, born, we have to flee, we come back, and all of a sudden, now we're bumping into John the Baptist, right? Because the focus is Jesus' ministry. So that's why we only have 2 chapters that lead up to it. And now we're at Jesus' ministry. So in the outline, then we go the baptism of Jesus, the temptation of Jesus, the initial ministry of the Messiah in Galilee. Then we have the Sermon on the Mount, proofs of Jesus' messiahship by words and deeds. The second discourse, the commissioning of the 12. Now, opposition of Jesus' ministry. The third discourse, parables of the kingdom. Then we go to critical events in the Jesus messiahship. Fourth discourse, instruction about humility and forgiveness. Now, we're talking the Messiah, he's come, he's God's son, he's doing his ministry. And you see these discourses, we read the Sermon on the Mount, the parable of the kingdom, what's the kingdom like, right? And then we see instructions about humility and forgiveness. Wow. That we see basically all of chapter 18 is on that topic, right? So that is, again, information that is given to us from the Messiah through inspired writing that's obviously never going to not be needed, right? That information right there is another highlight of humility and forgiveness. How many times do you have to practice that? How many times do you have to forgive your brother? Right? That was a question. That was a fair question. On this whole forgiveness thing, how many times do I have to forgive my brother? Anybody remember the 70 times 7, right? So kind of an odd question, though, in the sense, if we are looking at our own life first, what percentage of sin in your life did Jesus forgive?
100.
All 100, right? Every bit of it. So, or as the people talking at that time before Christianity, as the Messiah was with us, there's some times they ask, hey, how many times do I have to forgive this person, right? And you're going to ask the Messiah who forgave you for everything in your entire life, and how many times do you think you do the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over? Right? And he now when we forgive somebody, I don't pay the penalty. There is no, if I say, oh, you did this and I forgive you, I do not pay the penalty for that sin, right? I'm just going to say, it was never mine to begin. I am not going to let what you did affect me. So when you're like, I'm sorry I did that, I'm like, okay, we're gonna be done with that, because I have a responsibility to God, right? And so does the other person. But at no point do I actually pay anybody's penalty when they ask, would you forgive this or that? I'm like, yes. Now, Jesus, think about this, when he says he forgives us of our sins or wrongdoings, not only does he forgive us, he paid the entire penalty that was demanded by God for our sin. So, I mean, it's easier to look at it today and go, what were those people thinking? He's the Messiah. He's going to forgive them of everything. He's going to pay the penalty. And now we're going to go, oh, but this guy next door, he has done it 3 times this month, right? 3. What is the limit? 4? I hope 4 is it. Because no time. And yet we bring these problems to Jesus and we're praying, and do we take this? I never stop. I don't stop sinning. I don't stop doing the same stupid things over and over and over my whole life. And yet Jesus said, when you're forgiven, it's penalty paid, all done. It's as though you've never done it, right? So that, as we become Christians and we become more aware of what did Christ do for me, then we need to realize when we forgive somebody and say, I'm sorry and I forgive you, we don't pay for anything. All we do is hopefully we change our internal outlook towards that person. And now we can treat them as we did before. So that's a great one on, humility and forgiveness. We need to remember we were forgiven of everything. How many times are we supposed to forgive and we're talking not just our neighbor next door that doesn't go to church. We're talking the people in church with us. So that's a great discourse. Then in chapter 19, we have the commitment to the Messiah, to the divine task. And then starting in 21, we have the passion, which is opponents of the Messiah. The 5th discourse, which is the preparation for persecution and Christ's return. Now, that's a really fitting thing that, why would we expect to be treated different than Jesus was? Jesus brought the message, and some people responded well, and other people thought we should kill him. So, in our reaching the lost, should we expect anything less? In fact, you should think, if I am doing a great job of being a witness and I am reaching everyone, you should expect, where are the people who want to kill me for it? Because if you're not reaching those people, you're probably not reaching everybody, right? So where are the people that want to run you out of town? Where are the people that, all of those bad things that we saw? But if the measure is how people like Jesus, then we should have the same type of response. Some people should be just ecstatic to hear about forgiveness. other people are confronted and they don't like it. And so preparation for persecution and Christ's return. So I like to talk about Revelation and Christ's return. Christ is coming back. He's going to reward the faithful. And in that, since Christ has said he is coming back, although we don't know the time frame, we're on the clock, right? Every day we just got one day closer. Now, I don't know if the one day closer is 1,000 years from now or 2 years from now. I don't know. But I hope that you keep in mind no one else does either. And so, are you working as though Christ is going to return tomorrow, and hopefully right when he returns, he catches you in the act of witnessing to one more person, right? That is how I would like the whole end to come. And I would like to be out there and I'm talking to one more person. And then, because, at work, you're at work and you do many things. And all of a sudden, you're actually doing something really important for the boss. And he shows up, right? And you're like, oh, the whole day was worked it. The boss showed up. I was working on exactly what he said was important. And the boss doesn't know, like God does, what I do all day. So what does the boss think? That I'm doing it all day long, every time, So he's our human boss is thinking, wow, I showed up. He's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. And yes, well,
even better, he tells you you're doing such a good job here, come over here and do this.
Or what happens if the boss shows up and you've been working hard all day and you're just going to take a 10-minute break and all of a sudden you're not out, right? Now what's the boss think? That
really killing it.
guy is, right. He's thinking you're not doing. So Jesus, though, God knows what we're doing. But in my own view, I would like it all to end. And can I just be talking to one more person?
Have you shared that with him when you want it?
Yeah, your time frame.
Your time frame, I want to be sharing just as you split the eastern sky.
Yeah, and but here's the thing. We shouldn't, that would be the awesome view, right? But let me say this, that same viewpoint, you should have your whole life, because unfortunately we all get older somehow. It does happen a lot quicker than I thought. And with that, we all know people who have just passed away, right? So, although it won't be as nice for everybody in church, I would like to either go right from church and drop dead, and I go right from human worship right to
God's arm.
yeah, right there. I'm like, yes, I left. That was a good exit, or or the same way you're once again you're talking to somebody about you've got to make a choice, the finality of life, and then you die. And I'm like, that is a good object lesson on the finality of life.
Hung upside down on the cross.
Well, that's a more painful way, but I'm saying that just the normal ways, because if you could talk to somebody, about Matthew and about all of this, and you're telling him you only have so much time to choose, and that you don't know when you die, then I guarantee that person will be like, you would at least have another few minutes where that guy's like, and he died, right? Maybe
He was telling me about Jesus. I'm not going to get right.
yes, because that could happen to me, right? And unfortunately, it's not could happen; it will happen, right? So that's a great, the persecution, Jesus' return, why we need to be all busy workers, right? Because we all want to be caught doing something wonderful as we are raptured into the clouds, right? And then I was right there, right?
God also
The
knows
guy
what you
you
were
got-
doing an hour before that.
Say again?
I said, God also knows what you were doing an hour before that.
Well, I know that too, but, so that's a warning too, right?
Here's that.
There's no time that God doesn't know, but I would at least like to be caught up right when I'm, what's the last thing you did as a living person? Would you believe,
Yeah.
so keep that, that's the warning of Christ's return, is to keep us motivated. And finally, the death and resurrection of the Messiah. So the Messiah had to die. And that's what he kept telling his disciples. And in having to die, he was going to be resurrected. Right? And so we saw it during that, in between the death and the resurrection. How did the disciples respond?
They went back to doing what they were doing. They went back to fishing.
Like, well, he's gone. Oh my, I thought he was the Messiah. I thought they had all these, they had a crisis moment, right? Good thing Jesus said he'll be back in 3 days, because it was a true crisis moment for them. And so when he came back, then that confirmed the whole message, right? That is Jesus is the Messiah. He said it all along. He had miracles. God provided miracles. He did this. He was the lineage. He's all of these things. And when you come back from the dead, then just like you said, you would now he is confirming his messiahship, and that he paid for sin. And then right before he left, when he was ascended, I'll be back, but before I come, this is what I want you to do, right? That Great Commission. So that's, now we see it. That's going to be Matthew. So I think, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to stop right at authorship, just because I'm pretty much talked my voice out. So I do thank everyone for coming, and please read ahead so you'll have some idea, maybe some questions. And I will be absent for the next 3 Sundays, and David Adams, our favorite deacon, will be teaching the class. Yes. And so he will be teaching the class.
Like his head is well.
And so the topic will change a little bit. So David, if I could go ahead and have you close this.
Dear Father, we thank you for allowing us to come to your house to study and to understand how we can read from your word and learn and share with those around us, and how important it is for us to share, because we never know when it is our last minutes or last few hours, and we need to be, as Al said, sharing right up until that point. And we just pray that you will give us the words to say to those around us, and when we can share with them about your love and your mercy, how they can also have it, dear Lord. Pray that you will lead us in each thing that we are doing and we are preparing to do for our missionary trips and stuff. Pray that you will be with us this morning as we go into the worship service. Pray that you'll be with Miss Teresa as she leads us in song and worship, and bring Brother John as he prepares to bring the message, dear Lord. All these things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Before y'all leave, I know y'all are asking a lot of questions about the fire extinguishers. Buddy has replaced